On January 28, 1993, the world lost one of wrestling's most mythical figures. André the Giant, the towering French-born legend whose sheer size and quiet charisma made him a global icon, died alone in a Paris hotel room at the age of 46. The cause was congestive heart failure, a silent ending to a life defined by spectacle, pain, and solitude. He had returned to France to attend his father's funeral, only for his own to follow days later. Known to millions as the eighth wonder of the world, André's legacy extended far beyond the wrestling ring and his unforgettable role as Physique in The Princess Bride. Yet behind the bravado and body slams, André lived an intensely private life. Never legally married and rarely seen with family, he fathered one child, a daughter named Robin Christensen-Roussimoff, the product of a quiet relationship with a woman named Jean Christensen. Though he saw his daughter only a handful of times, André made one thing clear in the end. Robin would inherit his estate in full. There were no elaborate trusts, no legal battles, just a simple, staggering truth. The most isolated man in wrestling had left everything he had to the daughter who barely knew him. For Robin, the inheritance was more than money. It was the weight of a name etched in pop culture, the echo of a father known to the world but absent in her home. This is the story of André the Giant, and the only child who walks in the shadow of a man too large for the world to hold. Robin Christensen-Roussimoff was born in 1979, in the quiet shadow of a man the world saw as a living myth. Her mother, Jean Christensen, had worked in public relations within the pro wrestling world, an industry as chaotic and performative as the characters it created. Jean wasn't just an employee behind the scenes. She was one of the few people who ever saw André René Roussimoff, better known as André the Giant, without the lights, the cheers, or the cape of invincibility. Their relationship, however, was never traditional. They never married. There were no family dinners or trips to the countryside. What they shared was brief, private, and ultimately fractured by André's grueling global schedule and the unrelenting physical pain that defined his life. But it resulted in Robin, a daughter André would rarely speak of and barely see, but whom he never denied. Robin grew up in Seattle, far removed from the roar of arenas and the spotlight that followed her father. While the world idolized André's presence, marveling at his 7'4" frame and unmatched strength, Robin experienced none of the mythology, only absence. Her classmates had stories of bedtime routines and weekend outings with their fathers. Robin had posters. She had VHS tapes of WrestleMania. She had grainy magazine covers where her father lifted men twice her weight like dolls. But what she didn't have was his voice calling her name or his hand holding hers through a crowd. Her mother rarely spoke of the details, choosing instead to shield Robin from the reality that her father was often just a ghost in their lives, floating between fame and fatigue. The few moments Robin shared with André were short and awkward. She would later admit that they met no more than 5 times in her entire life. Each time it was like being dropped into a dream, one filled with cameras, handlers, and a man who belonged more to the world than to her. He was kind, yes, gentle even, but he was always on the move, always tired, and always hurting. Behind his massive grin and unforgettable screen presence, André's life was a constant struggle with the disorder that gave him his size. Acromegaly, a hormonal disease that caused his bones to grow uncontrollably and his joints to fail him too soon. Robin learned early that her father's fame came with a cost that didn't make space for normalcy. Then, in January 1993, the call came. Robin was just 14. Her father had returned to France to attend his own father's funeral, but never made it home. He died alone in a Paris hotel room from congestive heart failure. His body, after years of pain and spectacle, had finally surrendered. Robin wasn't there. She wasn't mentioned in press coverage. Her grief was personal, invisible. As the world mourned the loss of a legend, she mourned the absence of something she never truly had, a father. What came next was both expected and surreal. Though their relationship was distant and their encounters rare, André had made one definitive choice before his death. Robin would inherit everything. Not just the money, not just the name, but the full weight of his legacy. She became the sole heir to the André the Giant estate. That included all revenue from image licensing, royalties from WWE, and intellectual property tied to his name, likeness, and story. There were no lawsuits, no hidden siblings, no bitter family feuds. Only a teenage girl with her mother, holding the paperwork that legally confirmed what emotionally still felt uncertain. At first, the inheritance changed little. Robin stayed in Seattle. The money didn't erase the feeling that her father had belonged to millions of fans before he ever belonged to her. And the fame attached to his name felt more like a burden than a gift. Every conversation about him, every stranger's question, was a reminder of the distance between public legend and private absence. While the world remembered André as the gentle giant who once body-slammed Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3, Robin remembered him as someone who never picked her up from school, who never met her friends, who never called just to say hello. She had the rights to his story, but not the memories that made it whole. Still, something in her began to shift. Maybe it was the realization that silence wouldn't protect her. Or maybe it was her quiet determination to reclaim her piece of the myth. Whatever it was, Robin began stepping forward, not as a tribute act, not as an imitator, but as the only person left who could speak truthfully about André the man. She had no brothers or sisters to share the weight with, no family legacy to divide, just her, in the echo of a father the world revered and she barely knew. In the years that followed her father's death, Robin Christensen-Roussimoff quietly tried to live a life outside his shadow. But that was never entirely possible. Every time someone learned her last name, the conversation changed. Faces lit up with nostalgia. Voices dropped to a reverent tone. Was he really that big? Did he drink 100 beers a night? What was it like growing up with him? The truth was, she didn't. Not in the way they imagined. There were no campfire stories, no family road trips. Her connection to André wasn't built on memories. It was built on legacy, on legend, on silence she had to explain over and over again. And for a long time, Robin chose to keep her distance from it all. Wrestling, fame, even the name itself. But something shifted in her early 30s. The WWE Hall of Fame had long inducted her father as its first member. His face was still plastered on merchandise, documentaries, posters, and video games. He remained one of the most recognizable figures in wrestling history, and yet nobody was asking what that legacy meant to the one person who shared his blood. Robin realized that if she didn't speak for her father's truth, no one else would. So she started showing up, not as a fan, not as a relic, but as the official keeper of the André the Giant name. She attended tribute events. She approved licensing agreements. She made it clear. This story, this name, and this brand belonged to someone real. And that someone was her. Robin's relationship with the WWE remained cautious. For years, she had received royalties as his legal heir, but the emotional distance ran deeper. To them, André was an eternal icon, immortalized in bronze, body slams, and catchphrases. To Robin, he was a father she only met a few times and lost too soon. But with time came clarity. In 2018, she took part in the acclaimed HBO documentary, André the Giant, giving rare interviews about her father's private side. It wasn't always comfortable, but it was necessary. She wanted to tell the world about the gentle pain behind the giant's eyes, the loneliness of hotel rooms, the nights when his body hurt so badly he couldn't move. Her testimony wasn't just tribute, it was reclamation. Outside the wrestling world, Robin forged her own quiet path. She explored visual art, dabbled in amateur wrestling, and made appearances at fan expos where her presence always drew whispers. She never sought to be famous. She didn't need to be. But she understood the responsibility that came with the name, and the checks that still came from WWE and merchandising companies proved just how profitable that name remained. While not a fortune on the level of Hollywood royalty, the estate she inherited provided long-term financial security. With no siblings, no rival claims, and full control of intellectual property, Robin became both the beneficiary and curator of a brand built on myth and muscle. Yet even now, in her mid-40s, Robin remains something of a mystery. She rarely grants interviews, rarely posts online, and lives far from the coasts of celebrity culture. Her home is still in Washington state, private, grounded, and intentionally off the radar. To those who meet her, she is calm, articulate, and direct. She's not trying to extend the legend of André the Giant. She's trying to humanize it. She wants people to remember the chronic pain, the fractured spine, the long flights where no seat fit, the friendships that wore thin, and the daughter he barely had time to know. There's a quiet strength to Robin that mirrors the one her father carried. She didn't choose to be born into a legacy. She didn't ask to inherit the weight of 1,000 wrestling memories. But she carries it with dignity, with realism, and with purpose. She honors the truth more than the myth. And perhaps that is the greatest tribute of all. Because in the end, Robin's story isn't just about being the daughter of André the Giant. It's about surviving the silence he left behind. It's about stepping out from the long shadow of a man the world adored and saying gently, firmly, he was my father, and I'm still here. And so while Andre's name will always tower in pop culture history, the final chapter isn't his. It belongs to Robin, the only child of a giant, the quiet heir to an empire, and the one who turned absence into agency. But André the Giant's story is only one shadow in a towering maze, a world where myth turns men into monuments, and those left behind and are forced to carry more than just the name. Behind every roar of the crowd was a silence his daughter Robin had to live with. No spotlight, no stage, just the quiet inheritance of a legacy too big for one life to contain. She wasn't raised in fame, but shaped by the absence that it leaves. And she isn't alone. Beyond her story are others, children of icons, forgotten heirs, those who inherited not just estates, but the weight of unfinished truths. In the episodes ahead, we'll follow those threads into dimly lit corners, where the families of legends carry burdens no audience ever applauded. Stay with us. The next untold legacy is closer than you think. If you don't want to miss what comes next, subscribe to After the Fame and join us as we reveal more hidden lives behind the legends. Thank you for listening.